Welcome to the number one show and the source of truth for all things MedTech. Here, we reveal the secrets and stories behind the investments, science, and commercialization of the MedTech industry. Every week, we'll take you on a wild ride with the biggest names in the game, from entrepreneurs and investors who are shaking up the market to healthcare providers who are revolutionizing the way we think and practice medicine. So hold on tight and get ready for a journey like no other. This is the State of MedTech. Welcome back to the show, everybody. And we got him back. We got him back, ladies and gentlemen. The great, the inspiring Jim Heath. We got him back on the show. One of the most listened to episodes of our show to date so far is Jim Heath. And I think it says a lot just because of the number of people that he touched, inspired, and whose careers and personal lives he's helped build. He's made people not only better professionals, but better human beings. Through his leadership. And so I had Jim back on for this episode, though. We covered his approach to building a team. What does it mean to build a great team? How do you manage a great team? How do you take somebody who may not be that great and turn them into great? So we cover all that and more. And what I think is very interesting, many of you may not know this, but Jim, prior to his professional career in medical devices, was actually a college football head coach. And coincidentally, and I found out about this after the show, because I think if I knew this before the show, I would have given him more of a hard time. He actually coached my rival college's team. So he was the head coach over at New Mexico State University. I went to UTEP, of course. But I'm not going to hold that against Jim. But yeah, in this episode, we kind of covered those topics about what does it mean to get a team together, build people, and manage a great team. And for those of you who are curious about Jim's initial episode from last year, I'm going to leave links to them down below in the bottom. It's episode number 31. Of course, if you just Google Jim Heath State of MedTech, it'll pop up on Google or YouTube or wherever you decide to watch it. I'll leave the links below for you, though, just to make it easier. Now, before we get into the episode, I got a couple of quick announcements to share with you. Number one, if you have Salesforce in your organization, or if you're considering buying Salesforce, let me tell you my experience when it comes to it. We all have an idea of what Salesforce is going to do for us, but then it's really just a data set. This is why it's very costly to manage it. You have to get an admin for it and everything. All that is worth it. The problem, though, is entering data into there is a time suck, right? The quality of data that gets in is going to dictate whether what quality of decisions you're going to be able to make. And a lot of times the data doesn't even make it in there because, reps are busy. This leaves reps with a lot of information they need to close deals. And as a sales leader, a really awkward time at the end of every quarter where you're scrambling around, maybe hitting up marketing for help because you're trying to get the data out and figure out what decisions you need to make. Well, it shouldn't be like that anymore. Clary is the leader in revenue operations and intelligence. They are pioneering a category around revenue, collaboration, and governance, which means how do you, across your organization, between sales, marketing, and other departments, run revenue so you can be more predictable when it comes to your sales pipeline, you can accelerate it, and more importantly, close more deals. We've never said, and I don't care what company you've been in, nobody ever said, man, I closed more deals thanks to Salesforce. A lot of companies say, man, we closed a lot more deals thanks to Clary. So I highly recommend, whether you're a startup or a larger company, go and get that demo and analysis from them. It's amazing. You definitely learn a lot. You can get that demo. Just click the link below in the show notes or head to clary.com, CLARI.com to learn more. Just be sure to mention the show. And my Bay Area peeps, guess what? Papa's coming home. I am actually returning back to the Bay. I'm not moving back to the Bay. Sorry, everybody. But I will be in the Bay Area for Dreamforce. That's Salesforce's big event. I'm going to be teaming up with Claire. We're going to have an amazing fireside that we're setting up. I'm going to, share more details about that soon. But if you're interested in attending that event, go ahead and shoot me a DM on LinkedIn or send me a message, email. You guys know where to find me. And finally, is your sales team struggling to get access to physicians just like everybody else? You're trying to find a better, more effective way of driving product adoption? Well, That's why I put together the Medical Sales Network Effects program, which is a program, private community, and weekly coaching calls where I help reps, VPs, and CEOs understand how do you use social media platforms like LinkedIn to drive product adoption, to sell at scale, even attract investors. Here's a testimonial from one rep who went through the program. I actually trained him and his team. And here's something that happened literally within 3 weeks of him going through the program.
I tried to reach out to this one surgeon. I posted recently on LinkedIn about launching a bunch of new products in this year in 2023. He accepted my connection request, liked that comment, and 2 days later booked a case with this new technology that we had showed him 2 days later or 2 days prior. So it was like all like a methodical step. So, and the surgery yesterday went pretty well. He agreed to try it again. So I think from our standpoint, it was a win-win-win of getting the connection on LinkedIn to seeing our content, having a good inter-office meeting from a standpoint of being able to talk with the surgeon about the new technology and what his peer was doing, and then having a successful case where he would want to use the product again.
And let me tell you, those kind of testimonials never get old for me, whether it's selling and driving more pipeline, developing one's career. I've had many people who've gone through the program and got discovered and essentially leveled up, moved from director to a VP level or a rep to a manager level. It's a great program. It's an amazing community, and I want you in it. If you're a rep listening to this and you're ready to level up, click the link below. I went ahead and discounted the course and the program because if you listen to the show, I want to reward you. And if you're a sales leader who's interested in getting my help directly with your team, go ahead and reach out to me. Send me a message, and I'd love to talk to you to see how I can help your team use social media to drive product adoption at scale, attract investors at scale, and win the market. So with that being said, here's our episode with Jim Heath. Enjoy. Hey everybody, welcome back to the show. And of course, one of our top episodes last year, which by the way, my guest today has a lot of humility and is quite humble and jokes about the fact that he has no idea who would listen to it. But the number one episode, pound for pound, by a large amount, most downloaded episode is our episode with Jim Heath. Jim and I have become good friends, mainly through books. And so, Jim has been really fantastic just in terms of being a mentor to me, just in terms of my business. And of course, a lot of you, whether it's on LinkedIn or Instagram, have always sent me messages. When is Jim going to come back on the show? We want Jim to do this and that. So even though he's enjoying retirement, I was able to twist his arm and say, Jim, can you come back on the show? And the best part about this is not only has he come back and we have a great topic to cover today, he decided to join the good side and grow a beard just for this episode. Jim Heath, welcome back to the show.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Yeah,
absolutely.
I want to look like Omar, except that mine's gray.
Your beard can mentor my beard, though. It looks good on you. There's a saying in Turkey. They say like a man without a beard is like a cup of tea without sugar. So I guess the beard's the sugar. So at least that's what I tell my wife.
I tell people it's perfection.
Yeah, there we go. Exactly. So Jim, one of the topics that I get asked about most often, especially in relation to your episode, is that, for one, medical sales today has become a lot more complex, a lot more difficult, more competitive than it was even 5 or 10 years ago. And so the importance of building really strong, like number one, attracting talent, building strong teams, retaining that talent is more difficult because think like the Strykers, Medtronics of the world, the MedTech stars, they're not just competing with each other for talent. They're competing with Facebook, Google, really competitive places, right? And so, maybe the first place to start is that what were some of the key tenets in terms of the foundation you think of when it comes to building a team as a leader that you kind of took away from Stryker?
Well, I had the benefit of being able to see some really good teams. So when I went to Stryker, I had the ability to kind of get inside some of the teams that they're really performing well and get a chance to see them up and close. And when I joined Omar, the company was much smaller, as I had mentioned, I think in the last episode. And so it allowed me to see up close and personal some really good teams and some really good leaders of those teams, and what made those teams so good. So that's kind of how I was able to see that, and then in my former career in athletics, and I was at Ohio State University, and I was with the football team that was a perennial Big Ten powerhouse, and I saw the makeup of how that team had evolved, and how Coach Bruce had put together a really strong team. So I was very fortunate that I had some pretty good role models there.
Yeah, and I think that's what's very interesting about your approach to building teams and leadership is that you have this background as, from football, and you're also a head football coach. So maybe we'll start like the first thing, which is like recruiting the right team. Stryker and large organizations do Gallup polls and other things, which helps in terms of selecting the right bias and culture fit. But we talked about before the episode the importance of having a sort of a diverse team. And again, I think the diversity thing is kind of thrown around in a lot of different ways this year. We're talking about people who can look at a problem from different angles, which my late mentor Chris Sells talked about. He talked about how do you look for selecting the right team members that fit the mold, but again, provide that different perspective so you can have an all-star team.
Yeah. Well, I think that it goes without saying, in athletics or in business or in whatever organization, to build a great team, it starts with having great people around you. And I think that in the case of Ohio State, what I saw was they were able to recruit the very best from across the country, the very best, the best talented players from not only from Ohio but everywhere. And so being able to attract and recruit the very best, I think goes without saying. But I'd also say that it's also about fit and culture. And so you could say, well, they just go out because it's Ohio State and they've got the resources and so on and so forth. They can recruit really good people, which is true. But there is a fit and a culture piece of this thing that I think is very important as well. And the fact that Ohio State University, or name a University of Alabama, or the New England Patriots, or just name a team, and I'll get off the athletic analogies here in a second. But one of the things that the sustained success for that is the ability to attract people who are talented, but will also fit into the culture and help you build that culture. And so I think that is really important too. And that means that there's going to be some diversity in the makeup of that team. So everybody thinks that everybody on that team is everybody's an all-star. Well, yeah, they're all good. They're all good or great players. But sometimes you have these role players that have their individual contributions that are vitally important to the success and the long-term success, and they're kind of the glue that holds the thing together. So there was a guy, and I'll just use this since I'm on the Ohio State analogy here. There's a guy named Glenn Cobb. And Glenn is from Ohio, and he was a starting linebacker there. This is the early 80s. And Glenn was one of the hardest working guys I have ever seen in my life. He was not the most talented guy by far. There were other linebackers that were more talented, and he was a little bit undersized. He was about 6'2", maybe 190 pounds, which you think about, these linebackers today are 250 or 60 anyway. But he was the glue really that held that defense together. He was the guy that set the pace every practice. He was one of the most positive guys. And I watched this guy every day. And I know he played in a lot of pain and everything, but the guys loved him and the coaches loved him. He wasn't. He was a sincere guy. He was a very spiritual guy, et cetera, et cetera. And but he was vital to that. There were guys that were probably better than him. There were better than him, but you need that as part of this building a great team. And I think as you move into a business scenario, that you have to have people on your team, again, who are talented and have the skill sets, but it also can get along and can have the relationship skills that when you have crises, which you're always going to have, or you have things that go bump in the night, that these people can hang together and they can work together and get through them. So I think it's, talent's one thing, but you also have to have you have to have different players of shapes and sizes and thought processes and that can hold this together and help make it sustainable and make it build it over time.
Yeah, it's a great point, and I'm glad you mentioned this concept of a role player. I think, again, this is just from my observations that, a long time ago, especially even in the late 2000s, med device sales was very much kind of like a lone wolf individual sport. It's really based on your ability to get into a hospital, penetrate a market, develop those relationships. Now it's just, again, crowded marketplace. It's a lot more competition. So there's more of a need for, better marketing, team, more of a team effort. What would your advice be to leaders when it comes to evaluating talent? Like, what kind of traits and characteristics are you looking for that would identify somebody and say, they may or may not be a President's Club winner, we'll see, but they're going to be a great role player, great fit to make the team better? What do you look for? What kind of questions do you ask?
Well, again, I tapped into some of the very best managers that Stryker had, and I asked them, what are the questions I asked them essentially what you just asked me. And the great managers had a process and they knew what they were looking for. They were looking for somebody who in a sales scenario now, you're looking for somebody who could build relationships in a hurry, that had a great service component to them, that they were going to service, they were going to provide the best service to their customers every single day. You get back to them. They were persistent. Whatever they said they were going to do, they were going to do. So they had they were high integrity people, and those were kind of some of the very basics. And they also like to see maybe a track record of success, that they had done something, whether it was selling med devices or selling something, but they had been able to build relationships. I remember back in the day, we used to hire a lot of people who sold copy machines. If you remember those days, copiers and fax machines. But those people had to be on their own. They had to knock on doors. They had to be very persistent. They had to understand that they were going to get a lot of no's, but they would find ways to kind of get in the door, make their sales pitch, and then they had to provide great service and establish a rapport with their customers. And a lot of these guys had recurring business and so on and so forth. So I think all of those traits were things that we and then ultimately I looked for. And I would say this, Omar, that it comes in all shapes and sizes, and I think once they kind of identified those traits, we had a process, and we tried to make the process very robust. So we wanted to make sure that we made it very difficult to get in the door, if you will. So there was a screening process over the phone, and then after that, then maybe there was a face-to-face, and then there would be another face-to-face, and sometimes there would be a ride-along with a sales rep. Sometimes, especially with new sales managers, we would have a more experienced sales manager, somebody who did a very good job with hiring, bring them in. And then we'd put them through this Gallup profile and see how they paired with our very best. And then we'd bring them inside. So this was a long, process. I think they even do today. I think you have to make a presentation, and it's difficult, but that ensures or not. I wouldn't say it's 100%, but it better ensures that you're going to bring the right person onto the team that can do those kinds of things. But one of the things as the manager, I was trying to assess how would this individual fit with the rest of the team. Are they going to be a pain in the neck? Are they going to be an outlier? And I would tell you, I can handle, maybe depending on the size of the team, I can handle one or two pain in the neck. Actually, a lot of the salespeople are pain in the necks in their own way.
I say some of the as they get better, they become more and more of a pain.
Pain in the neck. What I wanted to make sure, I didn't care about their relationship, so much the pain in the neck to me, but were they going to be a pain in the neck to the rest, to like the inside people, to our customer service people and those types of things? Because that's another story. If they would, they would push me as a manager, but I just didn't want them, killing people inside. So
how do you screen? Yeah, and I think it's a good point that I think the interview process is really taken for granted, and especially when it comes to like a sales leader, saying, hey, this is somebody I used to work with, and it's almost like that person gets almost like a much easier time. So it seems like have more rigor in the hiring process, and you'll have much more success on the retention, because if you hire the wrong person to get them out, interview, rehire, like that might be 2-3 quarters,
Yeah.
You could kill a market,
You're absolutely correct. And I'd tell you that I actually got more rigorous the longer I was managing, because I just, as you just mentioned, when you go through this process, and then all of a sudden, as my old boss used to say, you have this sick feeling in the pit of your stomach 6 months later that you made a mistake. That is painful, and it hurts your business. It hurts your relationships with your customers as well. So we wanted to make this as rigorous as we possibly can, and to ensure that we had the right people. But also, I was to my comparison a little bit earlier, I wanted to make sure that they were going to be a right fit for the team as well, so that was that's that takes some time. But I am stunned. I work with several companies, just kind of an ad hoc basis. I'm stunned at the lack of rigor in the hiring process. We got to get moving. We got to we got an opening here. We got to get it. And I just stop. Make sure that take your time, because even though it's going to take you maybe a few more weeks or maybe even a month, but do not compromise on that, because that is just, it really, really hurts you. And that can be on the inside as well. If you're building an inside team, of making sure you've got the right people, the right players on the team that are going to fit the various roles that you need to have a successful project.
I'm glad you mentioned that. I gotta ask you, what was the mistake that you made in your time as a manager, hiring manager? Like, what was that one hire you made that kind of taught you a lesson that changed you? If you're okay sharing that.
Well, I made a number of mistakes, but
what was the most painful one?
And there's been quite a few. I think the ones that are the most painful are the ones where somebody comes back and you have an integrity issue. Performance, okay, it's a hard. These are hard jobs. I know that people who listen to this, they've got difficult jobs. So performance, maybe it's just a bridge too far. But when you have integrity issues where they violate integrity. They steal from the company, or they're doing something with customers that is just not part of the values. Those are painful, and they really disappoint. They really disappoint you as a manager. That how did I not see that? How did I miss that? Those are really, really difficult when you have those.
If you go back in with some of those hires, because you ran an entire division, you've hired a lot of people. When you look back at some of the ones that maybe weren't a great fit, do you feel like the signs were there during the interview process and you just overlooked it, or was there just no way of avoiding it?
I think it's a really good question. I use. I had there's a gentleman. I'm not going to. I'll call him. His name was Jim as well, and he was a storied regional manager at Stryker. Had a long, successful career, and was arguably, I think, one of the best regional sales managers that the company has ever had. And I learned a ton from him. And he gave me a couple very short but very powerful bits of advice. And he said, Heath, in the interview process, I make people prove they're good enough to work here. And I thought about that, and I said, you know what, that is because what happens when you're interviewing and you've got an opening, or you're trying to build a team internally. I gotta fill this. I gotta put somebody in here, and well, this person looks pretty good. They've got 10 years of experience, and oh boy, you're falling in love constantly with whomever you're speaking to. And Jim's approach was, I don't think you're good enough to work here. You prove to me that you're good enough to work here, because this is a special place. And I think it was one of the most valuable pieces of advice that I got when I was early in my career. That I looked at it in a whole different light. So that probably helped. It helped me tremendously. But in terms of are those red flags? The only other thing I would tell you that Jim also told me was that if you get in the process, and even as you could be down at the very end of the process, and there's something that just doesn't feel right, 9 times out of 10, you're right. So I kind of got to this part, Omar, where I said I trust my gut. If it doesn't, I won't trust my gut necessarily to hire somebody, but I will trust my gut if something doesn't feel right. Because I have hired people where I'm like, I don't know, there's something there that's not. And I would tell you that 80% of the time, 90% of the time, something manifests. And invariably it was, it was some sort of integrity thing. And so I trust my gut, and I make them prove they're good enough to work at wherever it is I was at.
It's funny you mentioned that. I think here in the West, we compared to, let's say, like the eastern part of the world, we don't focus a lot on intuition or that gut feeling. But I think you're absolutely correct in saying that. And it was funny. I was just having a conversation with somebody yesterday about this. Like even Warren Buffett talks about the use of, like, quote unquote, your gut or intuition. It's a great book that I read. Maybe we can read it, because I reread it often, called "Living in the Light" by Shakti Gawan. It's like it looks like a hippie book, but it talks about how do you train your intuition. And the thing about intuition, I think your gut feeling, is that it's unlike the ego. It's never this strong feeling of like, this is the thing to do, this is the wrong. It's always a very subtle thing with no details. Mm-hmm. And it's very difficult to listen to it. And I think that, like, learning how to train that is extremely important, especially as it comes as you get more experience, everything. But there's something to be said about that. I like that I guess you can call it a heuristic, which is you would never listen to your gut when it comes to hiring somebody, but when it comes to not hiring them, you would. Is that correct?
Amen.
Interesting.
Amen. But none of these things are foolproof, as you would suspect, because I have done the other thing. I have rejected, back when I was in a sales executive's role. I went back to instruments, and I'll give you the flip side of this. One of our very top managers, who had done extremely well, he sends this gentleman into Stryker, because that was kind of the final. I wouldn't call it a rubber stamp, but for this guy, it was pretty much a rubber stamp because he had hired some really, really good people. So he brings this guy in, and I interview him, and it was the worst interview one of the worst interviews I've ever had. And this guy didn't look me in the eye. He kind of gave me the wet dish rag handshake, and he kind of mumbled. And so I called this gentleman up, and the manager, and I said, "Hey Dan," I call him Dan. "Hey Dan, no way, no, we are not hiring this guy." He's like, "I'm telling you, this guy is a killer. He has done it, and he was in a different industry, and his sales graphs are just out of this world. He's got great relationships." I said, "You have got to be kidding me. There is no way we're going to hire this guy." So flat. A month later, 6 weeks later, he goes, "I want you to talk to him again." I go, "Really? Come on, we can't, this." So he brings him back in, and same thing. It was awful. So he lets it lie for. And I said, "Hey, we got to do something here. It's a pretty big territory." And he says, "I'm going to ask you to give me one get out of jail free card." And I said, "You know what? You've earned it. I'll give it. You get one." But I said, "I am going to watch this guy like a hawk." There is this. His sales graph looked like Mount Everest. It was unbelievable. This guy he killed it. He was a multiple rep of the year. Unbelievable. I mean, it was incredible what this guy did. And I went out with him. His relationships and his service orientation, what we call service orientation, was off the charts. Just incredible. It was one of the poorest interviews I've ever had, and he just absolutely killed it. And he knew it. He knew that I had rejected him a couple times. And I got up on the stage when he won the rep of the year for, I don't know, the third or fourth time. I got up and I said I apologized to him in front of the entire sales force because he knew it. I said I rejected this guy, a couple times, and I said it's one of the worst decisions that I had ever made, and I said, and he's proved me wrong, and I want to apologize to him in front of everybody for my
That's amazing
my mistake. Because he knew it, and and it was a little bit of animosity, between the two of us. And but I apologize. It was unbelievable.
Huh. I'll tell you, Jim. Again, I try not to use too many sports analogies, but I really do look at salespeople and sales. It's like athletics and sports. It's like it's the same way. But I'll add a twist, not a twist to it. I'll add it on top of that. It's very much like when the NFL is picking quarterbacks out of college because it's so all over the place. Like, look, Tom Brady, one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. He was drafted, I think, in the third or fourth round. Every scout was like, this guy's too short. He's not fast enough. If you look at his a famous video where it shows him yeah, and he's like in his 20s, but he's got full on dad bod. It's just like this guy's going nowhere. And I think that with salespeople, it's very much like that, where sometimes certain salespeople who have this unbelievable record, they come into an organization and they produce nothing, terrible hires. And on the flip side, at least my time at Missouri Robotics, I remember there were salespeople we hired from I don't know, fitness. There's a couple people who came from electronics. They had no experience, some straight out of the military, and they just found a way to succeed. If you go back with this guy, I mean, if somebody doesn't have a good handshake, they're mumbling, they just have a bad interview. It's hard to see past that and see that they're a good fit. So this person's track record was really good on paper. What was it? Was it just that interview it was so bad it kind of overshadowed all the good stuff?
Yeah. Well, I mean, ultimately, I guess I had final say, but it was more, I wanted to see the people who were going to interface with our customers. When I was the head of sales for instruments, and we were smaller at that time, but I met an awful lot of the sales force, and it was another way for me to connect and make sure. And just it wasn't so much of I was double checking people. I just wanted to see what our organization was looking like, and and did we have enough diversity in the people that we were hiring. But your point is well taken, because you can't judge a book by its cover, and you can't there are going to be people that come in there that look like they should be on the cover of GQ or Vogue or whatever, and they can make it sing, and they can get in front of you, and wow, they can just wow you. But a lot of them don't have the persistence. They don't have the dedication. Are they going to get up at 2 o'clock in the morning and go take care of the nurse at the hospital across town? All of these kinds of things. And then here comes the guy that I was talking about, and he doesn't. He went to some small obscure college. He's got a mustard stain on his tie, and all this kind of stuff. But this guy knows how to sell. He knows how to build relationships. He knows how to position products. He knows how to do all of these things. And so that's why you got to dig deep. You got to keep peeling. I learned it the hard way, keep peeling the onion back. And even with that, you're still going to make mistakes both ways, as I've just mentioned.
Yeah. And I think, one of the things, like for me, even, running my business, there's certain people that I've hired and it didn't work out. Other people that are with me now that are doing great. And I feel in my small world, the way I feel is that you find like the core values that are going to be most important, that are like non-negotiable, and anything else that you have to work on you can trade. So I'll use an example. He's going to be listening to this, but like my creative director, Raheem, he's new at what he's doing. The guy is just incredibly smart, charismatic, very good at what he does in terms of creating creative, including like some amazing clips from our last interview. He's going to love, like when I told him Jim Heath is coming back on the show, he was like, oh man, he's like, I love Jim Heath. He made like, I don't know, 7 or 8 clips. Usually it's like 2 or 3 per episode. He's like, that episode was so good. But as a young guy and a young professional, he's made some mistakes. But those are things that can be trained up to. At least what's most important to me is the guy's got a great attitude, always positive, willing to learn and take coaching, and doesn't take it personally. And it's like that stuff is most important to me. Do you feel like there's some foundational things that no matter what company, whether it's a Stryker or a startup, that once you get these core values, everything else can be trained up to? What's your take on that?
I think you're bringing in so really the kind of the focus of building a high performing team. So the sales organization, there, the sales groups that I just talked about were all external, and so it's kind of this virtual management thing. But what you're talking about, I think, is also very important for the people who listen to your podcast, the people who you deal with on a regular basis, of these internal teams, of being able to have to be able to select people who are going to be able to fit different roles, and I think you just said it very, very well, that are going to do things differently than you, that are going to do them in a maybe in a different manner, and but that's okay, and they're going to make mistakes, and and if you've got a culture of accountability, they're going to fix it, or you're going to help them fix it. And I think that's the other part of this, building these high performing teams, is getting really good people that are cultural fit, people who are and that have a diversity of thought, who are and are not going to act and talk and sound like you, who are going to disagree, and you as the leader need to be comfortable with that they're going to disagree, but that collectively, if you've got the right culture and the right fit, that you're all and you as a leader have got everybody pointed where you want to go, that you can build something that's pretty special. And I think that's the other part of this whole equation. Get great people, et cetera, but then be able to empower them. Say, listen, I'm here for you. I'm here to support you. I'm here to help you be a great success. We're not always going to agree about things. That's okay, but we're good. We know where we're going. What we have to do to make this thing be successful, not just now, but for the foreseeable future.
Let me ask you this. Hiring great talent is one thing. The other
Mhm.
side of the equation, and especially these days, given the marketplace and everything, people move around, whether it's in large companies or small. It's very common for people to move around to a better offer and everything, which I'm very much in support of. What's your guidance to leaders in terms of how do you retain top talent? And I get leave you.
I think as much as anything, Omar, people can talk about money and titles and so on and so forth, but I think people leave when they feel that nobody cares anymore. I think that's one of it, and one part of it, when they feel that the leadership or their manager doesn't care, they're not being managed, they're being micromanaged. They don't feel like they've got any power to make decisions. There's lack of trust, and that when they see those things, and when they're not waking up and running to work, they're leaving, especially today, because that's especially today. You want to try to create an environment where people are waking up every day and they can't wait to do their job, regardless of what their titles are or anything like that. That what they're doing is important. It has meaning. It has purpose, and that they're involved in a trusting, caring environment. And I know that sounds. Some people think that's now caring doesn't mean that there's no accountability. As a matter of fact, it's the opposite. It means, listen, we are all accountable. I'm the leader. We're all accountable here in this group here to get this done. Okay, and we're going to hold each other accountable, and to create a trusting environment here. We are going to figure this thing out, and we're going to disagree about stuff. We can argue in here respectfully, but we can have an environment where we can disagree without being disagreeable. But we have got to get this. But this is what we're commissioned to do, and let's do it. Let's kill it. Let's get it apart. And you, as the leader, have got to be comfortable with people calling you out, and people, being really, really honest with one another. I guess I've come to this thing, Omar, where people. Maybe we talked about this before, but people can handle. They can handle bad news. They can handle good news. What they can't handle is no news, and what they really can't handle is BS. And so I think that's got to be the environment that you create in these groups. And I think if you do that, I think you got a pretty good chance of keeping people around. Yeah, you got to pay them, and make sure and acknowledge them for what they do.
Yeah, no, I think that's again. Some people might say it's squishy, but this is what it takes to retain people, and I think that outside of making money, especially with younger professionals, they want to know that what they're doing is important and matters, and they feel like they're actually developing and growing. Like I think that you can really, I know that given the changes in HR and everything, people are afraid to be tough, but I think a lot of younger professionals are craving, to have a lot of responsibility, a lot of pressure added to them, but it needs to be done in a way where you're showing that, like, hey, I have a lot of self-respect for you, and I hold you to a certain standard, and I know you can be better. Versus, I think a lot of times the old school ways is like, well, if I just beat down on this person and kick them in the butt a few times, they're going to get the point. And at that point, I think subconsciously you've kind of made that person little by little think that they're not an A player, that they're a loser. And then that's what they end up producing. And then, I don't know, I feel like leaders are like, oh, I'm so surprised this person isn't producing. But if you look at the treatment of them, their feedback, like me personally, like I hate performance improvement plans, because I feel like the moment that you do it, it's already knocking the person's like confidence down. And I feel like there needs to be like a better approach to it. Like, I'm all about performance, but there has to be a better way of putting, like, I don't know. I don't know. I know of very few examples where somebody was put on a PIP and it turned out to be a happy ending. Again, that's my limited view. What's your take on that?
I think it kind of goes back to what I just said a few minutes ago, is that being honest that you as the leader, the manager of a group or a team have got to be extremely honest and with everybody, both in a group setting, but also in a one-on-one settings. And I think you have to do both. You have to be able to have a group setting where we're gonna check in and how are things going and what needs help and what needs support and this is going sideways, we got to fix that. Okay, so you can kind of have that. And again, if you have a trusting environment, you're going to get to the bottom of these things. But I also think it's incumbent upon the manager to meet with people one on one, and not to nitpick or to micromanage, but just to, hey, you know what? Last week that was great. Really, what are the 2 or 3 things that are really challenging it right now? And also have a personal side to it. I mean, so that you show, listen, I care about you, and I want to, and not this kind of superficial, hey, how's it going? Do you have a nice week? Okay, great. All right, now about the project. I think you have to get to know these folks and what's make them tick. And if they're not holding up their end, I think it's incumbent upon you as a manager to say, you know what, this is the 3rd week in a row where we're behind, and I've asked you, if you need help, I can help. I can give it to you. We'll support you. But this has got to change. Tell me what we're going to do. All right? You agree? I mean, and I do think it's got to. I do think you've got to do it. I think you have to do it. Nip it in the bud. If the performance plan that you mentioned probably should not come as a surprise to anybody if the manager is doing what they're supposed to be doing. That they know that we've got timelines, and and everybody's been, and we're honest and open with one another. If they're not cutting it, well, we got to move you. We got to, we're going to have to put somebody in here that's going to be able to hold up the end here. But everybody's accountable.
Absolutely. And I like, I want to point something out in that, miniature role play you just did, but in that talk track, you use the term like, how are you going to solve this? How are we going? It's more of a we thing versus, again, these are subtle things, but in terms, for me, like, great leadership doesn't start with saying like, what are you going to do? What are you, because then I feel like it puts a lot of pressure on the individual. Again, I'm very much about pressure, performance under pressure, but when you're managing teams, I don't know, there's a part of me where I feel like a great manager is able to take an average person and pull out greatness out of them based on the rules, the guidance and everything. Just, let's start maybe just out of curiosity, like for a territory manager or somebody who's got like maybe 5 or 6 reps under them, what's your advice to them? Like, how do you schedule and essentially design a week and a month in terms of like how you check in with people? Do you have an approach for that?
Yep.
Because sometimes I feel like it's like too many meetings is like micromanagement, too few is not enough. Like, how do you look at that?
Well, I can tell you, I will tell you, and this is, I'm you can tell by my beard, I'm a little, I am truly
seasoned.
Great, yeah, seasoned. Thank you. That's a great word. But I can tell you what I used to do with both, as a manager of sales reps and then as a manager of managers. And I tried to schedule things so that it was a regular one-on-one with somebody once a month. I mean, I don't want to
once a month, not once a week.
So, well, we would do a group call at the end of the week, and it would last about 30 minutes maybe. And it was to review the week and and it was really to kind of, hey, nice job, this is great, and really to give some accolades to the people that had a good week, but also to update them on things that were going on internally, or maybe some service types of things and things that they may not be privy to. So we try to make it was congratulate success. Here's some things that you guys need to be aware of. We got to giddy up here a little bit in the next couple weeks. But, and then we would open it up and say, okay, is there anybody having a particular challenge, or anybody seen something, maybe from a competitor and that thing. So it was that type of a get together once a week, 30 minutes most. But, and then I just probably impromptu. I mean, I had some reps, Omar, that would call me every other day, literally. Hey, how you doing? Okay. And some guys, I had to go find them. You'd think they had dropped off the face of the earth, and they were all different. But I got to know them and what kind of made them tick. But I wanted to have it at least, some sort of one-on-one dialogue with somebody here. I said once a month, but that was more for one-on-one for managers. But for reps, I was talking to people probably at least a couple times a week, I would think.
Except just checking in.
Just checking in. How you doing? And then I worked with, I was out in the field. I liked going out in the field. I enjoy. I went out when I was responsible for instruments. I tried to go out with somebody every couple months. I would rep and go into the field and just listen to customers. I thought it was extremely valuable.
Nice. On that same token, when it comes to like checking in, when you have like a more formalized one-on-one, how do you structure between, focusing on the business for that quarter, the next quarter, but then also balancing out to understand, like, again, you said like you got to figure out how somebody ticks. Incentives are really big things. How do you think about balancing that out and figuring that out? And again, there's not like a perfect formula to this, but I feel like there's some managers where all they do is just focus on the business without even understanding what incentivizes the people that work for them. So how do you think about that?
Yeah, it is a good question, and it is something I think that's very, very important for all managers, is to get to know your people. And I know some of this stuff sounds like, oh, that makes sense, but a lot of people don't do it. I mean, they focus solely on performance and numbers, and that's it. And I tried to get to know the individual. I tried to get to know the individual, and like I said, I had some guys. I had a guy outside in Detroit. I had 3 guys in Detroit, and I use guys in it's the Midwestern.
It's all encompassing. I'm from the South. I use guys as well for everybody.
I had 3. One of them, I had to, like I said, I had to put his face on a milk carton sometimes to find out where he was, and he performed unbelievably. He was phenomenal, but he was just, Jim, I'm good. I don't really know. But even with that, I still contend. I still would call him up. Hey, tell me what's going on. Hey, he was a big Lions fan. We talk about Lions. We talk about the Detroit Lions. Stuff. I just wanted him to know that I was there, and I love what he was doing, but I was there, and I cared about him. I want to make sure that things were going okay, because sometimes you take for granted your high performers, and you go, well, they don't really need anything. Actually, they need more than these other guys. They need to know that they're, especially with salespeople who are got big egos, that I've got to, they need somebody to tell them how good they are, because sometimes with the slippery slope, they kind of think, well, gosh, am I doing well enough?
It's so true, Jim.
And I had a guy on the other side of Detroit who called me, twice a day almost. I mean, my wife was finally, my God, what is 8 o'clock at night? You're down there on the phone with us. But so it varied, and it was all good. But you kind of get to know what makes them tick. But I tried to get to know them as a person, so that we weren't just sitting there and hammering out the numbers and the graphs. And they know. When you come there, what the deal is. You go to the New England Patriots, what what you're supposed to do, because if you don't, you're not going to be with the New England Patriots. And Stryker, you know what the deal is. I didn't need to. There was very few times where I needed to really put the throttle down on somebody. Not much at all.
Yeah, I think again this goes back to if you have like a good hiring process and some guideposts about like specifically what you're looking for and what you can train up to. I think you at least put yourself in a better position to hire the right person. You know, for me, I'm part of an entrepreneurial mastermind group, and I'm the only guy that focuses on medtech and biotech. Everybody else is like in other industries. We talk about training sales teams, and the main guy, his name's Jeremy. He always emphasizes like salespeople are different from everybody else. Like a marketing person, you can give them a plan and a goal, and they'll go away for a month and they'll make it happen. He's like a salesperson. They need daily structure and they need constant encouragement. You can like otherwise it just doesn't work. And again, it's I feel like it's very much like athletes. Like there's the performance side, but there's very much like the mindset side of like, how you set them up for success and how you kind of keep them focused and confident. Cause otherwise, like, it's kind of like, I think we've all seen it where like there's a great salesperson. Maybe they get a tough territory, a tough situation. And then like little by little over weeks and months of quarters, they like wither away. And at that point, it's like, they can't be saved anymore. They got to like leave and go to a new job, at least like in the medtech startup side, I see that all the time,
Well, I mean, you have to go in there with the right expectations. If you have to go in there and understand that you're going in and it is your business, and that's what we try to impress upon everybody that had a sales territory. This is your business. This isn't Stryker's business. This is your business. This is Omar's business. Tell me how you want to run it. How you're going to run it, and how you ran it, and how somebody else 20 miles away ran it was different. That's fine. Good. I mean, as long as you're getting the same results, as long as you're taking care of customers, as long as you're servicing them and you're getting results, I really didn't care. I mean, I didn't have this prescriptive, here's how you do it kind of thing. I think really, really good salespeople are really good, any kind of people. They want to have the freedom to be able to do things the way that they deem appropriate. Now, I mean, you got to there's certain kind of wide guardrails, I guess, if you will. But I mean, everybody kind of did it, and I encourage it. I want people to do it their own way with integrity, honesty, et cetera, and that we never had to question that. But
and so you're
I'll do it a little bit differently, and I'm telling you what, and it's good, and I think as managers, and especially when you have salespeople who become managers, that's one of the things you have to really, really make sure that the salesperson, if they want to move into management, that they have to understand that the people that they hire are probably not going to do it like they did, and they might be these super high performers. And you find that oftentimes that they like, well, wait, I did it, I did this, and this, and you need to do that. That's the way that's not, those things generally don't work for both sides. And so we try to, say, listen, let people go and do it their own way. And it's, be comfortable.
Interesting. So it's kind of like, it seems like great leadership, at least on the sales side, involves, hiring for integrity, focusing on specific things like, just always service the customer, take care of the customer, everything. And then it's like, however you want to get there, that's really up to you. So it's almost like you have some like key tenets to follow and core values, but then it's like, however you want to get from point A to point B doesn't matter to me as long as you get there, and just kind of like letting it go and just kind of like, it sounds like it's almost like being a parent. Somebody told me this about being a parent, and I'm like, oh, that's a good point. And again, for those who, for whatever reason, haven't followed me long enough, like, I'm a new parent, I'm a new dad, but it's less about being a parent, more about being like a really good coach. Like that's really, you just coach to the best of your ability, and then everything else is on them. It sounds like being a good sales leader has a lot to do with just being a really good coach and setting them up to sort of make that success for the business.
Yep, it does. And I said, people come in all shapes and sizes and have all sorts of different personalities, and how they get there, or how they get to the end is, I'll give you one more example. When I was back in the bed and stretcher days of Stryker, and I had gone out with this guy who had just done amazingly well. He had been when the bed business wasn't doing very well. This individual had done really, really well. And so I was asking him. I mean, we went to some of these huge city hospitals, and this thing was just money. I mean, everybody knew this guy, and we were going to these meetings, and they were just really, really well orchestrated and super productive. And so I said to him, I said, "Hey, what do you do? Do you have like this back a while ago, and when you had these day planners and stuff like that?" And I said, "Do you have a plan or something?" I'm not kidding you. He pulled an envelope out of the back of his pocket that he had penned what he was going to do that day on the back of an envelope. I am not making this up. I'm like, "That's your plan?" He goes, "Yeah, works pretty good." He goes, I just every day, every night, I've got a new plan. I have it in my head, and then I just write it down here and and then I'm like, holy smokes. I mean, this was a really big territory, and he just killed it every year. And I've been with some other people who got so caught up in their plans and their spreadsheets and all this other stuff, but they kind of got to the point where there was paralysis by analysis, and they couldn't ever get things going. I mean, what this guy did was he knew that what his magic was getting in front of customers and showing them where they had issues or where Stryker could fill specific needs, and he was masterful at it. And he had some of the best service orientation I've ever seen. So, like I said, it's am I going to go in there and go, "Listen, you need to have these spreadsheets and you need data and everything"? This guy's, like you say, he's going on the back of the envelope.
But it got done, and I think that for the show we we have this President's Club series. So like somebody who's won President's Club a few times comes on, and so I've interviewed 3 people so far. We're interviewing more, but the one thing I've noticed with every President's Club winner is that no matter how they do it, they always have a plan and they know what they're doing the next day. And even my late mentor, Chris Sells, in the one interview that exists of him, he says it, which is like, as a salesperson, how do you start your day? Do you wake up and just roll out of bed, grab your briefcase and just jump in the car and turn on the radio? Or do you wake up and you have intent? Do you have a plan? Do you know who you're going to see, why you're seeing them? And I think that, I don't know, even, I'm running my own business and I have all kinds of tools for software and everything. But, sometimes, Jim, I like it happened. I'm reviewing my quarter now. It's funny. I'll tell everybody who's interested, if you end up becoming an entrepreneur or running your own business, it's funny how many things when you're working at a startup or in corporate America where you're like, "This is stupid. Why do we do this?" And then you start your own business and you're like, "Oh, now I know why we do a quarterly review or we do a weekly review and everything." So I'm doing that myself. But something very, very simple that I found is just like at the very end of my day, take 30 minutes to just review, what did I do? What did I say I was going to do? And did it get done? And then the next morning, when I wake up and go through my, morning routine and everything, what is the very first thing that I'm going to get done? And it's just like simple things like that. It just makes such a huge difference. I think sometimes we overcomplicate these things, and it's just like, what's the one thing we're going to do in the morning and get done? That's it.
Could not agree with you more. Are you focused on the 3 things that are really going to move the dial for you?
Yeah.
Maybe all the things that are going to kind of, pop up and everything, but you can't be running after the shiny object. You have to kind of keep coming back to the focus of the things that are going to make you and the business successful.
I'm happy you mentioned. I think that, like, I don't know, just in my opinion, I see if you get better at managing yourself, you can get better at managing people. And I think one of the things I've seen from great leaders is not telling people what to do, but asking the right question that puts them in a position where they have to make a choice about what they should do. And in that process of asking that question, they kind of have this realization, like, I think one of the shiny objects is if you have a territory, there's this temptation to go after this new surgeon, big account, everything. But the question is like, is that the best way to hit your number? And are you going to hit your number that way? or are you better off, let's say, focusing on existing business and driving more adoption there, right? So like, I think like the quality questions you ask yourself reflects the quality of life you end up having, you know?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes, I agree.
So Jim, I know we're close to time, and I appreciate you spending time with us, but we got to wrap up with one of my favorite segments, right? Which is not rapid fire question. I did that last time, and those rapid fire questions I asked you weren't exactly rapid fire, but we got to end the way that most of our audience loves, at least for our interviews, which is some new books. So some book recommendations, any books you're reading now, any books you often recommend to sales leaders. Take it in any direction you want from here.
Well, I would strongly suggest that people either listen to or pick up a copy of Outlive by Peter Attila. He's a MD, and he was a neurosurgeon who is now kind of more of a health and wellness doctor with individual clients. But he wrote this rather extensive book on the physical, nutritional, spiritual, mental well-being, and with really practical kinds of ideas that help you live a healthy life, and for old guys like myself, into so that you're living a healthy life in when you get to be my age and beyond. Because you see a lot of people. I mean, I'm in my late 60s, and I see, people that are my age that are kind of hobbling around, and, I just, I want to continue to do things. And I read this book, and it's really, really good. I gave a copy to my brother, and I think he read it in 3 days, and I've gifted it about 3-4 times. And it's
a great book.
Really
that was our little miniature book club was Outlive. I thought it was great. And I think I'm happy you bring that up. I'm going to try and get him on the show, but I feel like this is an area for salespeople that's not talked enough about, which is for sales, you're out on the road, you're away from family and everything. And so focusing on like the things you're eating, your mental health, everything is so important. Cause like, sales will wear on you, especially like if you're taking clients out to dinner or, you're at a conference or whatever it might be. But this stuff, like, I don't know, not just for the longevity side, but I feel like it has an effect on your performance. It has to.
Yeah, I think that's a good one for the group, Omar.
What about on leadership? Any books you recommend on leadership?
Well, it just so happens that I am. It was sent to me by a guy who's got entrepreneur, got a small medical startup. And he sent me the I think it's called the 6 Working Geniuses by Patrick Lencioni. So it's kind of he wrote the 5 dysfunctions of a team, and this one is I don't think that's exactly the title, but it's the 6. It's the 6 geniuses of and really it's about kind of some of the things we're talking about today, about having understanding your various strengths and the strengths of the people on the team, and making sure that you have equal parts of those on a team in order for them to be successful. Because if you start to force people into areas where they're not, that's really not their strength or their passion, things don't get done. There's frustration, and sometimes people leave, or they get fired or what have you. But it's interesting, and it's not very long. It's Lencioni writes in a kind of a fable type of fashion, and so there is a fable part of it, but then the last third of it is really about kind of the model itself. It's interesting. I think it's very interesting. It's a kind of a variation maybe of some of the Gallup Strengths Finder type stuff, but in a different way, and it makes sense.
Yeah, no, that there's one book that's often referenced by a lot of sales. It's like the 5 dysfunctions of the team. I had no idea he wrote another one, so I'm definitely going to pick that up. That'll be really good. All right, last question for you. So, not the time of the release of this episode, but the day that we've recorded is July 12th. And July 12th is a special day because it's Prime Day. So my question to you, have you ordered anything interesting off of Amazon Prime as a result of Prime Day?
No, but I do have some stuff coming in from Amazon for my grill. My all the internal components of my grill are like super old and rusted, and so that's
Nice.
about it. That's really it. No, the big day is July 16th because it's my 40th, my wife's and I 40th anniversary. So that's
Oh,
the really
congratulations. Oh, that's fantastic. All right, well, we
yeah.
got to end on one last note.
For
So
40 years.
that's amazing. So we'll end on this last note, which is like, after 40 years of marriage, so that you said July 16th, so congratulations. What's your number one piece of advice to people listening to this who just got married or have been married? What's your best piece of marriage advice?
I was going to say the best one is marry your best friend. That's what I tell you. So there's, is to avoid competing, but we really don't compete. I mean, my wife has interests that I don't, and I have interests that she doesn't, and we're very comfortable with it. We love doing things together, but she loves to ballroom dance, and I'm not a ballroom dancer, and I'm trying to, I like to get on my bike and do, long distance type stuff, and that's not her thing. But we are next week going to get on a tandem and do the the ride across to Iowa on a tandem.
Wow.
Days. So we do things together like that. So yeah, it's fun.
That's amazing. Well, that's fantastic. Well, Jim, look, thank you for coming back on the show. You know that I'm going to get more requests again to have you back on, but we have fun. I think.
I appreciate it. Yeah, you're doing a wonderful job.
Thank you, sir.
Very good. Right. Take care.
Great. Thanks, everybody. Take care. Thank you for enjoying another epic episode of the State of MedTech. If you're feeling inspired and love this episode, do us a favor, hit that subscribe button and turn notifications on so you never miss an episode. And be sure to give us 5 stars and write a short review because that helps more people discover this amazing community of ours. If you're a company who has a executive that you'd like to be on the show, or perhaps you want to sponsor one of the episodes, shoot us an email at hello@khateebandco.com. Take care, and we'll see you next time.